Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. Testing, one, two, three. Testing, testing, testing. Yeah, there we go. I'm Bruce McDonald. This is the Talamanca Review. It is the 14th of February, Valentine's Day, 8:57 p.m. my time, which is, of course, Central. And I'm here in my secret location. I washed my hair tonight. I just do it with a bar of soap. You know, I'm entering, well, long ago I entered into what we'll call my Einstein years, where you just don't complicate things, right? And I'll tell you a little secret. Pretty much every cosmetic you use is screwing you up somehow. You don't need those things at all. You shouldn't have them in your life at all. And so I got rid of them a long time ago. Now, when you don't wash, I wash my hair about, well, I don't know, I'd say once every 3 months or so. But you have to perspire, and then the natural oils in your scalp keep your hair good. And, so my hair's a bit fluffy tonight because I did wash it. I don't know why I'm sharing that. I just can't think of anything to say right now. Let's try talking a little bit about the stress that people are going through trying to adapt to what's going on here with the Trump administration, because this is a shock to a lot of people's systems. I'm going to enjoy these cigars in the evening until my son leaves, and then no more. I find myself Facebook fighting again, and I pretty much gave up this habit around 2014. And it's 11 years later, and I'm back into Facebook fighting. The difference is, it used to be with strangers. Now it's always with someone I know. It's like that verse in the Bible, that, people who thought they knew each other will be separated at this certain time in history. And, I guess you could say, if there's one thing I'm sort of adept at doing here on the Talamanca Review, it is distilling things to their essentials, their elementals, actually. It's a distillation process, or a breaking down process. Now, normally this isn't good in life. It's not, I don't think it's a good thing when you're dealing with whole things that are a part of the Creator. I don't think we should have split the atom. I think that was a big mistake. I don't know why we did that. Oh, well, allegedly to build a weapon, right? But it's a big lie. And I don't think things in nature, including the human body, should be deconstructed. I wouldn't throw out allopathic medicine now, because we've got it and everything, right? Why throw it out? But I think things that do need to be broken down are one of the things that I really do like reverse engineering is people's concept of themselves. And I'm extremely good at it, as you can well imagine. I can just take a person apart like an old car or an old pickup truck, and I'm a mechanic. And I don't like to do it often, but now it's more of a mercy. We're getting into the tough love phase of this journey, where you're going to have to tell people the truth. And we have not been a people that have lived in the truth for a long time. Remember how I said a few podcasts back, and I've said it several times on my podcast, that when you live in other parts of the world, you live with death. You live with sudden death. You live with murder. You live with road accidents. And it sharpens you and makes you more appreciative because you know that life is a moment by moment event. And that realization is very spiritual. Somewhere along the line in our social evolution, social engineering, I'll call it, because it has not been a natural evolution, the Western societies. Not since the beginning, the end of the 19th century, and we're now in the 21st century. This is what The Devil in Us is all about. I highly recommend you read it. Not just trying to sell books here. It'll explain a lot. And this social experiment in the West has set us up. And you know, I've pretty much explained almost everything on the Talamanca Review. Everything. I've filled in gaps that not even very famous public-facing voices were filling in. You know, that everything happens here by human beings. We're never going to be victimized by extraterrestrials. We may be, but the extraterrestrials would first have to win over or influence human beings and have those human beings attack us. It's a very important concept to understand, and it's if you just remember that one thing, you'll cut through 90% of the bullshit. The biggest thing we have to fear as human beings is other human beings. Because, you know, everybody's going on and on about these so-called classes of beings that are malevolent and, you know, want to destroy humanity, like the demons, and I've debunked that. And then you've got hostile alien races, and that's much more real and literal than the demons. The demons are real and literal as well. It's just that what we've been told about them is a lie. And why wouldn't it be a lie? Look who gave it to us. Right? Solomon's bastards have given it to us. Temple of Solomon will be an evil construct. It should not be built. And make no mistake, it's what all this wrangling is about. In the Arab world, and I would say the Islamic faith, was created for the sole purpose of making sure that temple is not built. And I don't think they're going to let it be built. Now, in the past, I've said that maybe it should be built. But I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is the reason why that was given to me no longer holds water. It hasn't aged well. And that reason was to let something out that's here in our psychosphere. Maybe not physically, but in our psychosphere. And the temple is the way to let it out. But the person who told me that had been lied to and had absorbed the lie and believed the lie. It took me a while to figure that one out. Some of this stuff is tricky. It's like the most complicated knot you've ever unknotted in your life. And quite frankly, you're not going to get it done without grace. You're not going to get it done without your higher self. You're not going to get it done without a little help from our friends above. And there's lots of help out there now. I suspect anyone who sincerely asked for help now would get help. I can't tell you exactly where it would come from, but there's so many races of beings now invested in our success, but they can't interfere. Same reason that the negatives can't come out and just bitch slap us like the reptilians or anything like that, because there's law. And the way you get around the law is you get human beings to do it. And we're the stupidest fucking thing in the universe, at least in our present state of consciousness. You know, it reminds me of this great Osho clip I saw on Instagram one time. Osho was that whack job pseudo guru out in Oregon, but he was partially enlightened. There's no doubt about it. Okay, and those are my favorite guys to listen to because they don't really follow the rules. They don't follow the rules of the East or the West, and they speak more honestly in a lot of ways. And somebody asked him about democracy one time, and he goes, "Well, democracy is the rule of a people by the people." He had that really weird way of talking. And long pause. But the people are retarded. It's just, I can't do his Indian accent, but it was fucking brilliant, man. Okay? And we make ourselves retarded, okay? This is what happens. Now, one of the interesting things about the American experience is that it probably, of all empires in history, the American was the most egalitarian, not because it distributed wealth better than anybody else. And then you get into the definition of wealth, which is, who knows what real wealth is. I mean, my Nicaraguan abaca cutters, that in their family in Managua, they have, I don't know, like maybe 50 acres, and they live off of it and can make a little bit of money off of it. There's like 9 kids in the family. The mother and father are still together. Isn't that a kind of wealth? To be living with your family day in and day out, have your kids walk to school, walk home at the end of the day? That sounds like a family to me. That sounds like quite a bit of wealth to me. But what's truly unique about the Western experiment was the distribution of decadence. It used to be when you had empires, the empire could be rich and powerful and capable of subjugating any other kingdom within walking distance of an army. And walking distance sometimes involved days and weeks of walking, which would involve massive logistics and food supply in camp. Because when they sleep at night, they have to camp, right? You ever think about that? Like marching an army of 100,000 men 500 miles? Okay, I mean, you can maybe like do 20 miles a day. So you got to take it like 1 or 2 days off to rest. So let's say that you're doing 100 miles a day, 100 miles a week, 5 times 20, and that's if you're walking 20 miles a day. And the whole time you're lugging all this stuff, your food stuff, your camping stuff, your servants, the cooks. Some armies would travel with a kind of marching brothel, if you will. It's really kind of weird the way the whole thing works out. But any of these empires in the past, if you were a member of the empire, like a citizen, you could still be a very moral person. You might just because you were a Roman in the Roman Empire didn't mean you were an evil person. You may have been a Roman who just had a wife and 5 kids, and you had a farm, and that farm produced wheat, and as a tax you would give a percentage of your wheat to the emperor, so to feed the soldiers that protected you, and other than that you were completely left alone, right? And the decadence of Rome really existed, I think, with the elites, right? That's not to say that it wasn't a decadent place overall, like the city of Rome. But what makes the American empire and America as the center of that empire so unique is the way that they liberalized decadence. Okay? And this was done intentionally. Our friends over at Into the Microcosm, Jimmy Jean and Epic and Rio, they do an absolutely brilliant job of breaking down the 20th century decade by decade and showing you the mind control CIA programs run every decade. Whether it be Manson in the 60s, Playboy in the 50s, Aldous Huxley in the 50s, all just part of the same group of people bringing in the same ideology, which is decadence and service to self, right? And over 3 generations, they've completely corrupted us. And I myself am not corrupt. Doesn't mean that I haven't lived with decadence in my life at certain periods. I have. I've experimented with what we would call decadence. I mean, I've lived all over the world, right? Never been a hard drug user. Pretty much gave up drinking by the time I was 18 when I started meditating. But I would say that probably if... Yeah, I suppose that the truth is I've never been a real big proponent of decadence in my life. As a social experiment, like a Satanist or a bohemian or something like that. I just never saw any real use in it. I've been fairly disciplined most of my life, but I don't judge people, right? I mean, people are going to do what they're going to do. I mean, why not, right? I mean, if you don't have anything else going on, if you haven't been called to something higher, why wouldn't you do those things? If you had the means, But here in the West, something we didn't realize is that all of this decadence entered into our thinking, because as it passes from generation to generation, people lose contact with reality. And this is why you see generations of children born who don't really respect their parents, because they know their parents have lost connection with reality. They've been sucked into the program. And it takes longer for kids to get sucked in because you're very pure when you're young. Every child is born relatively pure. There's bad seeds, don't get me wrong. There's some really bad seeds, but generally speaking, kids can see the truth. They don't know the details because that takes time and experience and years, which is time. But they have the right context on what life is. And when they see their elders so misaligned in context, they lose respect. Okay? And it's natural and it should not be judged harshly. It's actually the correct thing to do. You should not respect somebody who doesn't perceive correctly. So where am I going with all this? Well, let's get back to the Facebook fighting. Let's start with the basics of what an economy is, okay? I've been over this before on my podcast, but, I'll do it again. Maybe, and I'm going to put a few twists on it this time. Now, generally speaking, if you're living in a group situation, agricultural or nomadic, and you had agricultural tribes, you had the Longhouse tribes in North America, who hunted a little and planted a little. But economics is not a science, a pseudoscience or a philosophical science. Economics is really the most basic thing in the world to understand. Now, the world gives us what we need to live. And when the world doesn't give us what we need to live, we die. It's that simple. Okay? So in the Ice Age, a lot of people died. They couldn't adapt. They froze to death, and their normal growing cycles changed, and they died. And it's a completely natural thing. When a tribe gets too big, most tribes will have sort of unwritten breeding policies. Okay? The Kabakar do. I mean, they've been there 10,000 years. and they have not overpopulated the Talamanca Mountains. And that's because they replacement breed. They don't overbreed. So because they've managed the most basic thing about economy, which is land, water, and procreation, they don't have a lot of economic crises. They don't, because the land is so rich here. There's always something to eat. Their crops don't fail, what they do grow. Um, and the animals they keep do not, because of their remoteness, do not get infected with any diseases. I've never heard of the natives losing pigs because, such and such a virus got into the pigs. You never hear that in native communities. Oh, they had to kill all their chickens on the reserve. How come you never hear that? Why is that just something that goes on in the first world? Could it be that we've broken certain laws in terms of the way? Let's split the difference on this whole meat thing, okay? Because I don't want to be fanatical about this, and I've been eating meat lately. And I will eat meat for about another 11 days or so until my son leaves. Let's say that you recognize that as one of the chapters I recorded today. Oh, I hope you enjoyed all those chapters I put up on Substack today, and I guess they get pushed to YouTube as well. But I did about 4 or 5 sections from the first part of the Galactic Historian. That's all my writing, and some of it's quite beautiful. I forgot how beautifully I wrote that book. It has a kind of a poetry to it that is just musical. It's beautiful. And, one of the lines that is in there is that, animals are in a contract with humanity to sacrifice themselves for the sustenance of humanity. And then the animals get spiritually bumped up. It's like a bump up, okay? Indicating a process here. And I do believe the process is real. I don't believe there's some demiurge preventing us from leaving this place. I think it's a long, arduous journey down here, like billions of years. Okay? I think that the Billy Meyer material, the cosmology he gave from the Palladians, is probably true. Probably some of the most accurate science of maturation we've seen here. Okay? And it's very, very interesting. And it just keeps going and going and going and going. And lost my train of thought there. Butterfly wings. Meat. Well, it would mean that you would keep meat as a foodstuff, but it would not be a large percentage of your diet. Okay? It would not mean that you had the right to raise the animals outside of their natural conditions. Put them into large steel warehouses like the chickens and the turkeys, into large milking centers that they do with cows. If the animals are living naturally and they're harvested at a natural age, meaning that they're harvested at an age that they would probably lose their life anyways if they were living in a natural environment, okay? Then I don't think it's such a serious thing to eat meat. But when you factory farm and you do this horrible shit we're doing and literally subjugate an entire species, so every incarnation has a role and a function. There's something to be learned spiritually. A cow is born to be a cow, and that cow needs to be out under the sun, out under the rain, and it needs to be eating grass, and it needs to be in its herd. It needs to be a social animal because they're a profoundly social animal. They don't need to be put into the equivalent of the U.S. penal system so that everybody can have cheap hamburgers and we can take the stocks on Burger King and McDonald's through the roof. I mean, it's evil. It's fucking evil. And maybe that's part of the reason why there's so much karma with the food supply now. But nonetheless, here, let me get to my point because I'm being a little long-winded. But I suspect that's one of the charming aspects of the Talamanca Review. There are things we have to do as human beings. We can't avoid doing them. You have to work. Okay? Thanks be to God, we live in a time where I can work at a desk, write books, do professional writing for corporate clients, and I can make a living. But if I couldn't do this, I would be in a field. I would be growing food. I would be tending to animals. I would be repairing stables for horses. I would be roofing barns. I would be working. Because work is one of the spiritual lessons of being a human being. There's a tremendous spiritual value in working. Now let's circle back to the corruption of the generations, which was done intentionally, by the way. And it's very interesting the way this whole thing is working and the timing of it now with what they're trying to do in the Trump administration and everything. Really, they're really just sort of returning to a much more natural law, okay, which is godly. Natural law is godly. Man-made law is ungodly. That's why communism is ungodly. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't twist my words. I don't agree with what they've done with the markets since the late 80s after they canned Michael Milken and put him in jail for 4 years. And then they took his junk bond idea and said, hey, this is brilliant. Let's legalize this and call it derivatives. They shouldn't be doing that. There shouldn't be billionaires like George Soros who practice predatory currency speculation. There shouldn't be shitheels like Larry Fink and BlackRock. People like that shouldn't exist. It's an aberration, but somehow, some way, they're connected to the way we've chosen to live and the decisions we've made. The level of evil they bring to the game is only possible because we've become so stupid about what fucking evil is. It's like, when this is why I say the world is always in balance. And this is why Christians, the stupid ones anyways, go on and on about the devil and the demons and blame the demons and the devil for all their problems, which is a bunch of horseshit. The demonic legions are here to maintain order. They're not doing their job because they were captured by fucking human black magicians, which should tell you how powerful human beings are. Which is why I keep saying the greatest enemy you're going to face is not an extraterrestrial. It's not a fucking demon. It's not Dogman in the woods of Oregon. It's fucking other human beings. Look around. That's the title of this podcast. It's Other Human Beings. And people's thinking is so corrupted. And because of the arduousness of my upbringing and what my father put me through, which turned out to be a blessing, I understand reality and how life works. And the best lesson you're going to get about how life works is at the lowest rung of society, with the poor, with the street people. Because it's all natural law there. You owe a debt, they kill you. You don't pay your debt, they fucking kill you. Or pimp you out until you pay it back. Okay? And that's just the way it works. Because if they don't get their money, they die. Now, if anything happened in an economy, some catastrophe, a natural catastrophe, and let's keep my model relegated to, let's say, tribal living at a population of 1 to 3,000, okay? So you would have to really well maintain your food supply quite well. You would have to keep a good eye on your crops. You'd have to not abuse the indigenous wildlife, okay? Not overhunt for clothing or meat. You would have to make sure that you were a responsible steward of the buffalo population. I mean, before the Europeans came, it was just kind of, in terms of just living, it was not a bad gig in North America. There was a lot of food, there was a lot of things to eat. There were deer, caribou, elk, buffalo. Really, one buffalo could probably feed 500 people. They're massive, like over 1,000 pounds. But everything had to be respected. And remember what John Edmonds said: you don't get to go into space and to other planets until you've mastered the environment you're in. And that entails being able to communicate, and it doesn't mean with language, but being able to communicate with animals and plants and everything around you. Talk to the wind, so to speak, to quote early King Crimson. These things are important. Now, I can't do these things with any proficiency. At various phases, I do have communication with animals, but I can't replicate it. It comes through, and I know what they want, and it's not something you can figure out easily by their behavior. And I just somehow know. They somehow communicate it to me. But we're supposed to be able to talk to everything around us. We're supposed to be able to keep everything here in harmony. But we're not doing that. Now, when we fail, the result is always death. So think of pre-modern economies before money, where everything was measured in a real and tangible product. Clothing, deerskin pants, deerskin to build teepees, trading axes to cut trees to build longhouses, all the while using renewable resources to create an environment that fits in with the environment, not separates us from it. The moment a civilization separates itself from the nature it lives in, they are on a course of self-destruction. Human beings are supposed to live in nature. Maybe not as remotely as I've chosen to do, surely, but nonetheless, we're meant to live in nature because nature is one of our teachers, because it's one of the tongues of the Creator. It is the creation is the word of the Creator. Tree is a word in God's language. The tree is the word. We just go Tree to represent it phonetically so people know what we're talking about. But the tree is a word in another language. Everything around you in the natural world is a word. It is part of the word of God. A river is part of the language of God. The sky, the stars, the wind, the moon, the sun, it's all speaking to us. Wouldn't be there if it didn't have meaning, because there's nothing here without meaning. So the consequence of error in a pre-modern economy would be death. Okay? And it would be a very sad occasion, but, or if they could get through a winter rationing the food and everyone went down to being really thin, and then maybe you can catch back up in the spring, okay. But that was always a risk. So a lot of Irish people died in the potato famine. And that was, the potato famine happened because they depended on one potato. And when that potato got a fungus, it spread everywhere, because there was only one strain of potatoes being grown in Ireland. And there are dozens, hundreds of different types of potatoes. And this one particular potato got infected, and they all got infected. So you have to cross-pollinate. You have to mix up your food supply. You can't be too dependent on one thing. And yet they were. So a lot of people died. When the English nobility were contemplating whether to help the Irish with food supplies, the general attitude spoken aloud was, let's let nature take its course. hard lesson, you know? So this is the reality. Like if I were to put you and your family in the woods, if you didn't work, you would die. And you would never miss a day's work because the consequence was death, and the death of your children, the death of your husband, the death of your wife. Consequence of not working was death. Okay? Because everything was from the land. Go and watch those Taylor Sheridan TV series, 1883, and all the stuff he does leading up to the Yellowstone, right? He backstories it. Very interesting, you know? There's a new series on Netflix by Peter Berg called American Primeval. Very fascinating, actually. And my favorite book, Blood Meridian, largely takes place at the Texas-Mexico border in 1855 and desacralizes the myths of the West and sort of shows you what it was really like. And it was brutal. Brutal. So you don't work, you die. So why do people think they can get things for free? It's not their fault. I'm not blaming them. Okay? You know, it's they believe that because a government told them that, or somebody running for government told them that, because that person wanted their vote. It isn't any more complicated than that. Now you've got crazy people like Maxine Waters going, where's the free corn? Where's the free cornbread? Where's the free pork bellies? This is America. This man's a dictator. The cornbread and pork bellies are gone, Maxine, because you raided the fucking cupboard and you lost connection with what an economy is. You ignorant fucking bitch. Same thing with fucking Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren. Same thing with Bernie Sanders. Although I think Bernie knows better. I think Bernie's just playing a role. By the way, this is one of the things I admire about the Jews, is they never forget that economy is a real thing. And it has teeth. So you got all these liberals squawking now. People are going to die. They're cutting off Medicaid. They're doing this. They're doing that. Well, would you have eaten the way you did if you knew there would be no medical system for you to give you free insulin for your diabetes, you fucking idiot? No, you probably wouldn't have. So did your government do you a favor, or did it do you a disservice? I would say it did you a disservice. Okay? And that's government in a nutshell in the democratic model. There should be criminal penalties for lying to people in an election campaign. But they made all that legal. Barack Obama made propagandizing to the American people through public media legal in like 2008 in an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act. And he changed the Smith-Mundt Act. And then on top of that, we're now finding out he fucking, through USAID, they were giving all these fuckers at the New York Times and all these liberal rags money. They didn't have to earn their money. Okay? And it weakens people. What it weakens first is your perception, because you have lost connection with the natural order and you become weak. And after a while of living that way, you don't think right anymore. You don't perceive right anymore. And then you pass it on to your children. And then they pass it on to your grandchildren. And I just fucking explained the whole 20th century to you. It's no more fucking complicated than that. So why would you think just because we created a means of exchange called a dollar, or a colone in Costa Rica, or a franc in France, or a yen in Japan, or an RMB in China, that the laws of the economy which come from nature would suddenly no longer apply? Who told you that? Nobody told you that directly, but you were led to believe it by what your politicians told you because they lied to you to get your vote, to get into office, to rob money for them and their family, not giving a shit about what happens to you and your family. You see? Here it is in a nutshell. All economic failure ends in blood. Blood pays the debt because the system we're in now is a blood system. Because the people running it are a blood people. They're in a blood covenant. Blood, 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 blood. But the blood of my Savior, Jesus Christ, saved me, Bruce. Really? So they're not going to foreclose your house because Jesus is going to show up? Pull your fucking head out of your ass. Fucking idiots. Caustic one today. And after all those beautiful chapters from the book. But I'm borrowing a little bit of the energy from the Facebook fight. Okay? I'm borrowing a little bit of the energy from the Facebook fight. So people can't believe what's happening. You know what I can't believe? It took this fucking long for the reality check to happen. It should have happened in 2008. But it didn't. So why is blood or death collateral in the modern economy? All you got to do is think about it for a few seconds. But you have to understand darkness, which is why to be wise, you have to incorporate your shadow, as Carl Jung said, or as my friend and your friend Robert Wiegand said, you have to understand darkness. You cannot be wise without understanding darkness. Doesn't mean you become dark, but you have to understand darkness. Okay? Because darkness has a lot of lessons for us. It's half the lessons down here. Half are light, half are dark. You alchemize the two, go above, and the duality goes away. Boom, you're enlightened. Okay? But while we're down here, we have to ping pong between the light and the dark. My life has definitely been a double dose of darkness, but it was like an inoculation. So now I'm immune to all this shit that's going on. Psychologically, spiritually, and physically. Because I saw it coming 10 years ago, 12 years ago. People thought it was fucking crazy. How do you explain something to people that you get through intuition or just through a multidimensional viewing of things and a little bit of grace in your meditation or your prayer, and you know the higher forces sort it all out for you and go, yeah, this is a reality, it's going to happen. And it didn't hurt that I had a fairly good understanding of economics from the old man. So what happens at a time like this? Well, the death collateralizes the debt because every living human being represents an energetic consumption on a daily basis, no matter how low they are on the totem pole. Okay? Doesn't matter how low they are on the totem pole. They still represent an energetic consumption. Every human being has to have X number of calories every day. Every human being has to have heating in the winter or in a cold fall or spring. Okay? Every human being needs to sleep outside of the rain. That means people have to cut trees, build foundations, frame walls, put gypsum on them, insulate them, put a brick facade on the outside, throw up a roof, throw the tiles on the roof, and put a furnace in the basement. Whether it be a shelter at the Salvation Army or a condominium, it's all the same thing. It's energy. Do you see? The money represents energy. If you are $40 trillion in debt, where are you going to get the energy? Because the money is energy. You don't have any more energy. And so people die. Because when they die, you can take, let's say that somebody dies at 45. And they normally would have lived to 80. Well, you've just taken 35 years of that energy quotient out of the economy. And that is through an inverse tabulation in the national economy, collateralized as a debt payment. This economy has always been about blood. Are you fucking stupid? It's run by Jews. And they're all about blood and sacrifice. A little bit of tough love tonight. Sorry about that. And affirmative action and DEI didn't do us any favors because we have all these fucking morons in politics now who couldn't pass a first-year micro and macroeconomics course in an undergraduate program. They don't fucking get it, nor do they understand what I'm explaining to you folks tonight. You think Maxine Waters or Elizabeth Warren or AOC understand this? Or that fucking idiot from the Crew out in Minneapolis? She probably gets it better than most people because she comes from Somalia. And that's a place where you get killed for your debts. Usually with a machete, by the way. They can't afford bullets. So she probably understands it a lot better than other people. Iran Omar? I forget how to pronounce her name. The old timers, they know. Mitch McConnell, all these like old-time Republican, Nancy Pelosi I don't think Nancy Pelosi gets it. Gavin Newsom gets it. But he's paying the debt of California. He's clearing the land and he's killing people. That's how he's balancing the books of California. Do you see? Why do you think so many of these people tie to fucking organized crime? Nancy Pelosi comes from a fucking Italian mafia family. Hillary Clinton had ties to the Chicago mob. Why do you think they all come? What happens if you can't pay your debt to the mob? They kill you. So death has always been a part of economy. And now these fucking morons rack up the debt to the point it's at now, and Trump's the bad guy because he has to deliver the bad news? Oh, there's no more Medicaid, there's no more this. I've been saying this for 5-7 fucking years on radio and podcasts. They don't have the fucking money. Oh, Bruce, you're just being cynical. No, I'm being literal. They don't have the fucking money. And at some point, they're going to fucking kill you. And the only reason they let it go so long is they had this depopulation plan in mind with what do you call it? Project Agenda 2030, Agenda 2020. It was all about depopulation. Okay? And that's how they were going to spend the money. People who understand what an economy really is, they live austerely. Okay? Jewish billionaires will have a seamstress sew new armpit fabric into their shirts rather than buy a new shirt. People who understand money live austerely. Yeah, they may fly on private planes and all that, but that's only because it's a write-off against their corporate earnings. Best life in the world now is the peasant life. You get yourself 2 acres of land, a pig pen, a chicken coop, a well, solar panels, a Starlink hookup, work remotely in customer service, make $2,000 a month, which couldn't get you through half a fucking week in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, or any major city in the United States. But when you're homesteading and you got a greenhouse and you're growing and you got a mushroom shed, and you're recycling everything and you're using your cow shit for fertilizer, you're going to make it because you control your economy. But people have convinced themselves that human beings transcend nature somehow. How they did this, I don't fucking know. Okay? We are a part of nature. I love that Sadhguru saying, we borrow our bodies from the earth. And when we die, the body goes back to the earth and gets recycled. All the atoms, the minerals, everything gets broken down, goes back into... We don't take anything material with us. Kind of amazing. There is a raw edge to spiritual truth that none of the teachers in the world teach now. They're all because you got to approach Westerners so fucking delicately. Oh, God is love. God loves you, and no, fuck. It's much more. How would I put this? You could understand the metaphors of heaven and hell in a life without dying. Okay, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Anyways, that's my 50 minutes. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review. Sorry about the spanking, but I don't know who needed to hear this tonight, but I just felt like doing it this way tonight. Peace out.